Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees. That's good. From Sridham Mayapur. My name last time I checked was Madhavananda Das. These are morning adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. And today we're in the house of Guru Gai Prabhu and his good wife, Lolita Kun Mataji. It's quite an adventure for us. So we have a really in front of us today, which is Krishna's tears over the Vraja-like gardens of Mathura. Gora Gruganya Gana Gocha Goloruharam Goranga Gudatama Gopyara Kopa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami Narayanam Namaskrityam Naramschaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamadurayat Vedi Ramayaneschaiva Purane Bharate Tata Adavante Chamadye Chahari Saivatra Giyate Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Shigurum Dinataranam Paramananda Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Parikoribe Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Paraye Manamo Rahu Niramtare Manamo Niramtare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 So we have a new situation today, and I'm sorry I forgot our space ball. It's definitely Anapani's fault, to let everybody know. So this is our 26th session about the meeting in Kurukshetra. And for those of you who missed out, we spoke in the beginning for, 10 sessions or something about Krishna leaving Vrindavan and what happened, the conversation between Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda about Krishna going and how Krishna left the gopis and how Krishna entered into Mathura, what happened in Mathura, how it is that Krishna didn't return to Vrindavan from Mathura, and the letters that were exchanged between Krishna and the Brijbasis, and how Krishna then went to the school of Sandipani Muni. That's been our last few sessions. And we're going to take up from there. So today we wanted to call it Krishna's tears over the Vraja-like gardens of Mathura. So in the Gopal Champa, which we're mostly speaking from, it speaks something about Krishna and Balaram in Sandipani Muni school. In the 45th chapter, the 10th canto, the same topic is there. Text 33 describes, Tayo Dvija Vadastushta Sudha Bhavanu Vritti Pravocha Vedan Akilan Sangopani Shado Guru. The Sandipani Muni, whose Dvijavara, He's the best of all the Brahmins. He became tushti. He became satisfied with the Sudha Bhav, the love of Krishna and Balaram. And because of that, Anubriti B, because of their submission, then Provacha, he spoke something. Something, I have to stop for a second. William, it's okay?
Yes.
All right, just checking. All right. It's a personal thing. Because Krishna and Balaram, because they were the Sudha Bhavanubriti, they had this very humble mood. Then Provacha Veda, Sandipani Muni taught them. Sometimes we think in the age of Google that we take information in a very cheap way. You just Google something. If I want to know what is a commentary on Sarvadharma and Pratyagya, I just Google, right? And it tells me. But when Ramanujacharya was approached by Kuresh, one of his leading disciples, and Kuresh was super, super learned, very famous scholar, he came to his Guru Maharaj and he said, what is the meaning of the Sarvadharma and Pratyagya verse? And Ramanuja told him, he said, well, if you, I forget, he said something like, if you spend 3 years or something doing services and that, then maybe you'll be able to understand this. And Kuresh said, Guru Maharaj, my life is very short. Who knows if I'm going to live that long? Is there like a shortcut that I can do? And then he told him, he said that if you go, I think it was 1 year, you spend 1 year just begging and you have no idea who's going to give you food or who's not, and you live like that, then you come back to me. And so Kuresh did that, and he came back to Ramanuja, and Ramanuja said, now I'm pleased with you, and I'll teach you the meaning of this. So we have a misunderstanding in the West about information. We think, oh, if I memorize a whole lot of verses, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wrote in one article, he said there are people who have memorized everything that Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, but they don't understand a word of it. It's not just by memorization, but it's by service. And so this verse is teaching us here, because Krishna and Balaram had this Sudha Bhavan, this submissive, loving mood towards Sandipani Muni. Then Tushta, he was satisfied, and Provacha Veda, he began to speak the Vedas to them. In the Vishnu Purana, it's described, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Sahasrashyam Dhanurvedam Sasamagraham Adyitam Ahoratraish Chatur Sastya Tad Abhutam Abhuduja. That is astonishing that in just 64 days and nights, the Vishnu Purana says, Krishna and Balaram learned the Dhanurveda and all different works. I find it really interesting that the same Krishna who killed Putana as a little baby, who killed Trinavarta and Aghasura and Bakasura and all these terrible demons, he had to go and study warfare. But he did. He studied Dhanurveda from Sandipani Muni, amongst other topics. The Harivamsa Purana also speaks about the education that Sandipani Muni gave him. And Harivamsa says, To chashati do viro yatavat pratipadyatam ahorat tres chatusastya sangam vedam adityatam. That these two boys were Shruti Daro. They remembered everything that they'd heard. And they learned all the Vedas and their Angas in 64 days and nights. So then when Krishna and Balaram, it was time for them to graduate. And for me, that's also a very important principle. They'll say something a little controversial, right? Because controversial things are fun. Okay? I like controversial. Once one devotee came to my Guru Maharaj, and he said, Maharaj, I don't know, I just can't tolerate living in the temple. And Guru Maharaj's response I found very deep. And he said, Are Baba, how long will you go on living in kindergarten? And it's a simple comment, but it has a lot of depth to it. Because our mission in the temples is one of education and training. But how long are you going to stay in school? And so many people, they get educated today, but how many people think, I'm just going to stay in the university for my whole life. I'll never leave school. That's weird. Now, you may graduate and become an administrator or a teacher in the school. That happens sometimes. And anyone who goes to a school, we have an expression in America, alma mater. That means that's the school that I went to. And they remember you whenever they need money. They contact you. Hey, we need new computers. We need this. They ask you for something. And there's reunions and things, and you have some connection with that school. So that's normal. That's normal living. So similarly, our temples are not meant. I'm sorry, it may be controversial. It makes me very annoyed. Our temples are not meant as places to live. Real people need a house. They need a garden. They need friends. They don't need somebody telling them, watching them every second of the day. And why were you late for Mangal Artik this morning and this and that? Look, leave me alone, We need to get a life. The purpose of the temple is very important, especially for Westerners, to have some education. But after education, then you graduate. And graduation means that you take what you've learned and you use it somewhere. And this is called the Hare Krishna movement in our case. And there's a difference. This is one thing I've told every GBC member I can meet. I was very blunt about it. I can be a very blunt person. I'm from America. Not as blunt as Australians, but we can be blunt. Huh? And I just tell them, Maharaj, please, my humble request is that we understand there's two separate things. There's ISKCON and there's the Hare Krishna movement. And they're two separate things. And ISKCON's meant to serve the Hare Krishna movement. But the Hare Krishna movement's not necessarily ISKCON. There's so many other Gaudiya Vaishnavas like Srila Sridhar Maharaj and Narayan Maharaj and different groups. And we can be friends with them. It's okay. They're also chanting Hare Krishna. But even within the followers of Srila Prabhupada, people have their homes, they have their communities, and we should create Vaishnava communities. So Krishna and Balaram graduated. Now, there was no fees in Sandipani Muni's school, and that's also an important thing. Interesting topic, just to touch on that for a moment. Braj Prabhu has this college school in Govardhan that he's starting. He's asking me, what do you think? Before we were just having it for free, but I have my doubts about it now. And I told him, we've been speaking about Sandipani Muni and their school. And he wasn't charging. But Krishna and Balaram paid a big fee. Their initial fee was their attention and their allegiance. They made a commitment. And that's an important thing. Whereas we see today, if there's free education, people, they do it for a little while and then they quit. There's no commitment. So there should be some commitment. Otherwise, the teacher will be frustrated. Then the student will only become half-baked. He'll only get half of what should be learned. There should be some commitment. Krishna and Balaram had that. So today, because that commitment is lacking, we don't have that kind of culture. And sometimes people have to charge money. It's a sad thing. Prabhupada encouraged that. So it means that when you do programs, if you charge some money, sometimes more people will come and they'll take it seriously. Which if you give it free, they don't. But this wasn't the case in Vedic culture because there's a whole different society, a whole different cultural understanding. So they offered some dakshina when they graduated from school. That's our system. After you've learned something from the teacher, not necessarily before. Before they're very sweet with him. They brought some gifts for him, and they were humble and submissive. And they did service for him. But at the end, after they've gotten, they can digest what they've gotten, and they can see the value of it. What should we give you for dakshina? And so they asked him. And Sandipani Muni kind of turned to his wife, and they went in a little huddle in the side room, and they said, look, these are special disciples. We should ask for something really extraordinary. She said, I want my son back. Sandipani Muni has a son and a daughter. And so they went and they asked Krishna, we lost our son. He was playing at Mahashiv Ketra, a place which is known as Prabhas, which we tell some stories about sometimes. And he was taken by the ocean. So then Krishna went there to the ocean and he called for Varuna. And Varuna came because he remembered previously when the same person came in Treta Yuga as Ramachandra and I didn't show up. It was kind of a problem. And he picked up an arrow and he was going to destroy me. So Varuna came there very quickly. Varuna also remembered prior to that, that his servants had captured Nanda Maharaj when he was taking a bath, and it was a big mistake, and Varuna really had to apologize profusely. So he remembered that. Krishna came there. Varuna, what's going on? So Varuna came there and said, it's not me. I didn't do it. I didn't take him. But it was this Panchajanya, this conch shell demon. And so then Krishna went there and he fought with Panchajanya. And the Skanda Purana, the Avantikanda, the Skanda Purana describes, Tata Panchajanam Hatva Graha Rupa Mahasuram Tanmajastam Sajagraha Sankagrashtam Hiyat Pure. That when he, Hatva means to kill, when he killed Shankachuta, then it says Tanmajastam, there was a conch shell inside of the demon's belly. Interesting thing. Sometimes we think he was a conch shell, but there was a conch shell inside his belly. And our acharyas have commented on this, that it came out of the demon's body, Tadanga Prabhavam, when Krishna killed him. And it's also described by our acharyas that Panchajanya is actually an eternal associate of Krishna. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that he actually wasn't a demon. He's like Jai and Vijay. Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha are not actually demons. They're just actors in a play, and they're doing a really good job. So like Jai and Vijay, Panchajanya was an eternal servant of the Lord, and he was behaving in a certain way. Again, in the Skanda Purana, it describes that when Krishna blew the conch shell, he took that conch shell from Panchajanya, and Krishna, who's Sarvagya, he understands everything that's going on. Balaram's just waiting on the bank of the ocean with no idea what's going on. Where's my brother at? He just jumped in the ocean. Krishna at that time, Janardana Shankam Pradadamo. He blew that conch shell very loudly. And it's said in the Skanda Purana that when Krishna did that, something amazing happened. Asipatra vanam nama sernapatra majayata roravam nama narakam arororavam abhuttada abhairavam bhairavakyam kumbhipakam apachakam. That when that conch shell sounded, then there's different regions in hell. And we have different regions in hell in this place also. One is called America, another is called Russia. Those are also, this is called Australia. Those are also parts of hell in this world, for those of us who live in Mayapur. So there's one hell which is called Asipatravana, and in there are trees which have leaves which are razor sharp, and they cut people to pieces. So when Krishna blew his conch shell, all those leaves fell off the tree. When that sound came about. And there's another hell which is known as Rorava. And in Rorava they have these beasts called Ruru. It's mentioned in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam. And they'll go and they'll eat you if you've done some terrible things, so you should be careful. And when Krishna's conch shell blew, all the Ruru beasts, they ran away. Forget it, man, this is not for us. And the hell known as Bhairava, which is a very, very fearful place, nobody was afraid there anymore. And in Kumbhipak, where they have like big kitchens, and they cook people, all the cooking stopped as soon as Krishna's conch shell was blown. And the Skanda Purana, Vantikanda, goes on to say, Papak Shayat Tata Sarve Vimukta Naraka Nara Padam Avyayam Asadya, that when everybody there in hell heard the sound of that conch shell, they all became said Papak Shayat, they became free from their sins, and Vimukta, they became Vimukta Naraka, they became delivered from Naraka, and Padama Avyayam, they went to Vaikuntha in the spiritual world just by hearing Krishna's conch shell. So we like to remember that conch shell when we do artiks and things, when we blow that. So I'm not going to go any further. There's a long description about this pastime in Gopal Champu and also in Harivamsa Purana and different literatures like Skanda Purana and different commentaries in the Bhagavatam. But that's not really our main purpose. We want to hear about the feelings of separation between Krishna and the Brijbasis. So the Gopal Champu, Jiva Goswami says that Krishna left Avanti Desh and he returned to Mathura. But before going, he very submissively, in a very sweet way, went before Sandipani Muni and his wife, offered their obeisances, and they asked, Guru Maharaj, can we have permission to go now? And that's culture. I've seen to this day cultured people in India, when they're leaving a room or something, and there's some senior person there, can I have permission to go now? And it's very sweet. The senior person likes that very much. Huh? So at that time, when Krishna and Balaram told Sandipani Muni that, Sandipani Muni, he became choked up. Tears were coming to his eyes. And he said, Atma sniyati, my soul has so much affection for you. He's not saying my mind or even my heart, my chitta, but my soul. Atma sniyati me svato yuvaka yo buddhi sutta prapanam. He said that my buddhi, my intelligence is embarrassed. You brought back my son, who left this world. You took him from the boat of Yamaraj. And Sandipani Muni then, he offered a prayer. Tasmad yadavako yuvam anujanu sishyacha putrocha to buyastam kimu vaguru cha pitaro chaivam samabhayate. My prayer to you, my request, is that you two members of the Yadu dynasty, Yadavako, Yuvam, Anujana Sishyo, that in all my future lives, may I be your guru. And maybe we be your parents, because he's indicating that this is the nature of guru. He says here, Kimu va guru chapitaro, not just that I'm your guru, but I'm your father. Because Gurudev has so much affection for us. Gurudev is our father, he's our best friend. And when Krishna and Balaram heard those words, tears also came to their eyes. And they said, Bhavata Vijaya Bado, Kitav Ayam Yadi Prabhu. He addressed him as Prabhu, oh master. Tada Bhavata Evicha, Karanam Dunivaranam. There's a reason, a karana, why we became your disciples. Because you had this intense desire. We couldn't refuse it. And that's why we slipped away in the middle of the night from Mathura. So because they wouldn't let us go. We wanted to join the Hare Krishna movement. We wanted to move into the ashram, become brahmacharis, but they wouldn't let us. So we had to sneak away to do that. And Krishna and Balaram then began to cry. And two boys bowed down to the ground. And Sandipani Muni gave them their ashirvad. And there was such a sweet exchange that it took quite some time. And they wanted to depart, but they couldn't. And then finally, when they got out of the road, they found the king of Avanti Desh was there, along with all the citizens. And everybody, along with Sandipani Muni and his wife, they all started following Krishna and Balaram on the road. This is also Vedic culture. When a special guest comes to our home and they leave, that's our culture. We should get up and walk with them to the door, at least. Or better, to walk with them to the road or walk down the road with them, depending on how dear they are to us and depending on the relationship. And here, because Krishna and Balaram are the life of everyone in Avanti Desh, they all just started following him down the road. And this was a problem for Krishna and Balaram. How are we going to get away from everybody? So finally, the police, we really got to go. Please let us go. And everybody in this town's crying. And finally they let Krishna and Balaram go. And Krishna and Balaram, then Jiva Goswami says, Atajana Rajim Nivartayantu Madhuram Eva Vyaharatam. They spoke very Madhur Vacha. They spoke in a very sweet way to keep the people from leaving. And what did they tell them? Very interesting thing. Dehashano Mathura Dhamma Janma. Dehashano Mathura Dhamma Janma Bur Gunavale Sayam Adyantika Puri Tamathura Stan Ihavasamantata Sandrastrum Avancha Janan Manastitam. They said that you should please know the Dehasha, no Mathura Dhamma Janmabur. The Mathura Dham, that's the Janmabur, the place of the birth of our Deha, our body. But Avanti Gunavale Sayam Avanti Puri. Avanti Desh is the birthplace of our qualities.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we've gotten our qualities. So what is the value of Mathura? That's just our body.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we were born. But Avanti is a place. In other words, he's indirectly saying also that Sandipani Muni, you're really my father. Guru Mata Guru Pitta Guru Hanapati. The Guru Dev is our real father, our real mother. Because Guru Dev gives us knowledge. So Krishna and Balaram are speaking so sweetly here. Mathura is where our body comes from, but our good qualities come from here. And Krishna went on to say, Tan Mathura Stani Vavasamantata. That in my mind, Sandrashta Madhyanta Janan Manastitam, I'm always going to see all of you everywhere. I'm always going to remember you, just in the same way that I see the residents of Mathura everywhere. Reading this, things build on each other. And if we start just from the middle of something, we can't understand properly. Let's look back. This discussion we're just having is from the 10th chapter, the Uttarakanda of Gopal Champu. Now, in the 6th chapter of Uttarakanda, which most of you weren't present for our discussions at that time, when Jiva Goswami spoke about Krishna and Balaram, and they had this great problem. They wanted to return to Vrindavan. Krishna promised, Ayasha, I'm going to return. And he killed Kamsa. He killed Kuvaliyapiti, he killed the wrestlers, he took care of Kamsa's wives, he's really a nice guy. He told all the Brijbasis and all the residents of Mathura, we all have to go and attend Kamsa's funeral. He said, that's so nice. And he was so sweet to Kamsa's wives. But then Krishna was ready to go. He was very happy. Now, going back to Vrindavan, all the boys are, yeah, this is good. They collected some stuff in the city and some nice clothes and some pots for mom and different gifts and things. But then the residents of Mathura, they called Krishna and they had an assembly. And they didn't invite Nanda Maharaj or the boys who were with Krishna and Balaram. And they told him then, thank you very much for killing Kamsa. We really appreciate it. We're very, very appreciative. But Kamsa was our king, and he was a really bad guy. But Shishupal, Dantavakra, and all these demoniac kings, they didn't dare to even think about approaching Mathura when Kamsa was here. But now Kamsa's dead, and they're going to attack, and who's going to protect us? And aside from that, actually, you belong to us. You're our son. You're the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. So you should stay. And Krishna and Balaram, they didn't know what to say. So they went and discussed amongst themselves. They went and spoke to Vasudeva and Devaki. And Vasudeva and Devaki said, you should stay. So then they said, we have to go speak to Bappa, father. They didn't address Vasudeva's Bappa, father. They went to Nanda Maharaj. And Krishna at that time told him something which is very similar to what he told the residents of Avanti Desh when he was leaving. They're all following him. So far I'm remembering this. And Krishna must have remembered this also, because it's very, very similar to what he said. He said, speaking to his father, he said, Gopanam upasama jameva natu yadavanam eva davya te kav ashmakam gyataya eti tu surida iti gyati bi suridam kav itadrisha eva beda. Suritsu taditaya kadachit vasa sada tu gyati shu tat aloka sukaya bhavati iti. He said, Father, I'm going to stay where great souls worship me. And so this will always be Gopanam Upasamajam. I'll always be close with the cowherds. But not to Yadavanam. I won't be close to the members of the Yadu dynasty. And Krishna tells him, he said that the cowherds are my surid. They're my drug. They're my intimate friends. They're my relatives. And the Yadavas, they're my friends. He said, there's a difference between relatives and friends. Sometimes I stay with my friends to help them out, but I always live with my relatives for the happiness of seeing them. So I think that when Krishna Jiva Goswami doesn't directly say this, but how can it not be? When he said, when he spoke these words to the residents of Avanti Desh, that Dehasya no Mathura Dhama Janmapur, that Mathura is the place of my birth, but all my good qualities come from here. And wherever I go, I'm going to think of you and remember you. Krishna must have remembered Vrindavan in his words to Nanda Maharaj at that time. So, Jiva Goswami says that Sandipani Muni and his good wife, they really appreciated Krishna's sweet words. And they returned home. But with their minds, they followed Krishna and Balaram. And Krishna and Balaram, before they went, they embraced them and they thanked the king very much. We really appreciate everything. Thank you very much for sending the army. We're just brahmacharis. We didn't need the army. It's nice you had the army give us some escort here. And so then they got on the chariot, and they got on the chariot with the best of Brahmins who were there along with them. And sometimes they were stopping because the Brahmins were getting on the chariot also, and they just told them, look, you guys got to go home. You have a wife, you have children and things. You can't come with us. So then the Yadus, they heard that Krishna and Balaram had arrived on the outskirts of Mathura. And again, it's a really sweet thing. Krishna didn't just enter into Mathura and just show up. Yo, dude, here I am, Dad. He didn't just do like that, but rather he stayed on the outskirts of the city for their order and for their permission to enter. A very nice thing, not just we barge into Gurudev's room or the room of our parents even, or some senior person. Hi, Mom, here I am. Just like somebody wrote me a message recently, and they mentioned their father, and they called their father by his name. They said such and such G. And I felt immediately unhappy with that. That's not nice culture. You never address your parents by their name. Yes, mother, yes, father. You speak like that with respect. And similarly, we don't address Sanatana Goswami and Hari Bhakti Vilas as we shouldn't speak the name of our guru. He says, but it doesn't mean that I deny him. And if somebody asks you, who is your guru? Sanatana Goswami says you should fold your hands and you should address him, you should give his name, but you preface it, you should say, Shri Srimad. My Gurudev is Shri Srimad such and such. And similarly with the husband and wife is also a culture like that. The wife's not supposed to call the husband by his name. It's said that if the wife does that, it shortens the life of the husband. Very bad. So they came on the outskirts of the city, and they sent some message, hey, we'll come back. And the Yadus, they came and they put Vasudeva in the center. And then they chanted so many Vedic mantras, and they had banana trees there, and they sprinkled water and haldi, turmeric paste on the ground, and they received them in a very sweet way. And so many people came to see them. Then one of the first things they did, Jiva Swami says, is they were asking, so what did you guys learn? That's the first thing you do when someone's returned from school, because they want to share. They're exploding with that. And by remembering that also, then we imbibe something. And therefore, it's very important that we should reflect on whatever we've gotten. And Jiva Goswami is indirectly saying this too. So this is a discussion actually going on in Vrindavan by a great devotee named Snigdhakanta and Madhukanta, who previously were Nalakuvara and Manigriva. And they became trees, and Krishna liberated them. And then they became Snigdhakanta and Madhukanta. And so he's telling Nanda Maharaj all about this. And this is what happened in Krishna and Balaram. They went to school, and they rescued the son of Sandipani Muni, and then they returned to Mathura. And Snigdhakanta said, wherever your son goes, everything becomes effulgent, and he makes the heavenly planets become manifest there. And when Nanda Maharaj heard that, his voice became choked up. And he says that if my son goes anywhere, and maybe he fights and he gets a big kingdom, but later he returns home, considering it all useless, then his mother and father will be happy. And if somebody hears about that, they'll also be happy. And then at that time, iti Shri Krishnam navagamam iti Trishnad bhavan alingana sanginam vidaya. That Nanda Maharaj, he was hankering for Krishna so much. He was feeling that Krishna just returned to me. And Alingana Sanginam, he was embracing Krishna in his heart. And Nanda Maharaj began to cry. And everybody else who was watching, wow, they all started crying also, all the Brijbasis. And this is Krishna Katha. This is Snigdha. This is the original Krishna Katha, Snigdha speaking this. I hope we get to the topic we were going to go on to today. It's taking a little longer than I thought. So when Krishna returned to Mathura, what was practically the first thing that happened? Krishna began to think of Nanda Maharaj and the Brijbasis. Samprapti tu duragamanam api nisamayishyate. And he said that for so long we haven't heard any news about them. They've been seeing, he says, Yachateshu madhya spurti. They've been seeing my spurti. I manifested myself there before them to relieve their feelings of separation. But still it doesn't give them full satisfaction. He said, Madhilokanam eva shokam devayita, that the only way to dissipate their lamentation is if I appear directly before them. Tadeva katam samavid. He said, but how can that be done? And so Krishna was speaking like this privately to Balaram. Because again, nobody can understand what they're going through. It's such a beautiful thing when we feel some separation from a loved one, from your husband, from your wife, from your father or children. You can speak to your friends about it. But if there's nobody there, you're in a place and nobody can understand, then what is the condition of your heart? This is the condition of Krishna and Balaram and Mathura. Nobody can understand. They can't speak to anyone. Only there's two people Krishna can speak to, and maybe a third in Mathura. One person is Balaram, and the other person is Rohini. And so Balaram, he heard what Krishna had to say and heard his heart, and he said that, I understand you don't want to break the orders of Vasudeva and the others in Mathura, and I understand what you really want to do, because Balaram could just look at him and understand Krishna's thinking about sneaking off in the middle of the night and going back to Vrindavan and just running away from Mathura. I want to go back. I want to see the gopis. I want to see Baba and Mata, father and mother. But Balaram said, Krishna, I'm Dauji, I'm the older brother. You take my advice. We should speak to Rohini, my mother, because she knows Vrindavan and she also knows Mathura. And so they went to Rohini in a solitary place, very private discussion, and crying. They told her their problem. And then Krishna said, Mata, we've been gone from Mathura for some time. Did anybody come from Vrindavan to see us while we were gone? And Rohini must have broke her heart. She said that someone came, but you weren't here. And they were very sad. And they left. And then Krishna said, did they know that we went to Avanti Desh? And she said, most of the people didn't know. But your friends, they could understand something. And so then the boys, they said, Krishna Balaram said, what do you think? Is it okay if we secretly go back to Vrindavan? And Vasudeva and Devaki, they won't even notice. They're so busy, so many things are going on. They have so many works to do. And Rohini said, I've also thought about doing the same thing. And I could go with you. But I don't think it's a good idea because Vasudeva and Devaki will definitely notice. You can't just slip away. And also, she said, in particular, the attendants of Vasudeva and Devaki, they're so ecstatic. They're servants to get to see you every day. So, speaking like this, then the three of them, Bhuya Shri Vraja Rajni Mukhanam, hearing these words from Mother Rohini, and thinking about Mother Yashoda, and how Mother Yashoda must be crying and crying, all three of them began to cry. And then they decided, what can we do? We have to, can I have your keyboard? We have to have a proper person and send a message there. Does it sit on the harmonium? Okay, great. So now I want to take you to a wonderful book called Vrindavan Lilamrita, which is written by a devotee about 200-300 years ago named Nandakishore Goswami. He was the Mahant of the Nityananda Vat near to Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan. And he was in the line of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And it's a wonderful book. He had a disciple whose name was Bondhu. And we sometimes tell the story of Bondhu, how Bondhu had darshan of Krishna. And because of Bondhu, Nandakishore Goswami, his guru, got to have darshan of Krishna. And Krishna revealed many pastimes to him. And Nandakishore Goswami wrote them down in a Bengali book called Vrindavan Lilamrita. So in that book, he speaks about what happened now in Mathura. So I'm going to sing this, and you can play Mridanga maybe, and you guys can chant Hare Krishna in response. He says, Atyantani vida briksha gana susobita shakala ujana moya hai che pushpita bolo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram He says that there in Mathura, Atyanta nivida briksha gana susobita, there were many, many beautiful trees. And Shushobita, they were so beautiful, and there were many, many gardens there. And there were so many flowers in those gardens in Mathura. Dadasana Matra Ati Chanchala Hridoya Gokula Aranya Maitri Smarya Tanoya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Dadasana Matra Ati Chanchal Hridoya. When Krishna saw that, Ati Chanchal Hridoya, his heart became very agitated. Ati means very much. And Gokula Aranya Matra Smaryatam, he remembered the forest and the beauty of Vrindavan. So I want to take a little side topic right now and turn to Hari Bhakti Vilas, which in the 7th Vilas of Hari Bhakti Vilas, Sanatana Goswami has compiled so many glories of flowers and glories of gardens. And he says there that is a very, very special activity to plant a garden for the pleasure of Krishna. So this is what's happened in Mathura. And that garden, what is the purpose of that garden? What is the purpose of the gardens that we make? We want Krishna to come. Not just we're going to grow flowers for Radha Madhav. That's nice. That's a good thing. But also we want Krishna to come. Say, hey, what are you doing? What kind of flowers are you growing here? I like, because Krishna likes these flowers and trees. Krishna likes these gardens. And the proof is that one day in Mathura, Krishna's wandering through those gardens and he started crying. And he became very agitated because it reminded him of Vrindavan. And therefore Thakur Bhaktivinoda in Gita Mala, he gives a beautiful song speaking about all the different types of flowering trees and plants that he wants to put in his garden. And then he wants to bring the Vaishnavas there, because that's the best place for Krishna Katha. That's the best place for Kirtan in such a garden. So the Hari Bhakti Vilas describes, it quotes Skanda Purana, Griha Durva Bhavai Pushpais Tattakasha Kuso Bhavai Budaram Samalankritya Vishnu Loke Brajendara. That if you grow some dharma grass in your garden, the dharma grass is very important, and you have some kusha flowers there. The kusha flowers, we were trying to get you to pick kusha flowers, you didn't want to do it. Those kusha flowers are very, very nice. You put on the altar. It says if someone does that, then Vishnu Loki Brajana, you won't take birth here again. You'll go to the spiritual world. You missed out. Sorry. What to do? Good luck next time. And then Sanatana Goswami, he speaks about, again from Skanda Purana, he says, Ugra Gandinya Gandini. And there's some flowers which are good to offer, but you don't offer ones that have Ugra Gandhi. We have a very strong, bad smell. There's some flowers which have a disgusting kind of smell also. They smell like, I've seen there's some flowers which smell like a sewer or something. Those flowers, you can't offer those flowers. And agandhini, you can't offer flowers that don't have any fragrance. And then it goes on to say, anyayatana jatani kantakini tataivat, you can't take flowers that are grown in someone else's garden. Very important for Hare Krishna devotees. Or flowers that are grown on a thorny plant. They're also not suitable. And then he says, Kalika bistata ne jam dina champaka jai subhai shushkar na pujayat vishnu patrais pushpai falar api. He said, you're not supposed to offer flower buds to the deity, except for Vina champaka jai subhai, except for champak flowers. You can offer champak buds to the deity, but you're not supposed to offer other budding flowers. This is what it's. We'll come back to this in a moment. It goes on. There's more things to be said. And suskana puja yad vishnu. You're not supposed to patapusha. You're not supposed to offer dry leaves to the Lord either. You can offer fresh leaves. That's okay. And it says also pushpai falarpi. You shouldn't offer dry fruit. And then some verses later, he quotes from Karma Purana. Pushpe shakodake kashte tata mule fale trine adatanam madeshtayam manu praha prajapati. The Prajapati Muni has said that if you take some flowers or spinach or water from other people's property for the purpose of offering it to the Lord, that's not actually really stealing. It's okay. So don't feel bad. You won't go to hell for that one. And he says, in fact, you shouldn't only pick flowers from one person's garden, but you should go to many. And perhaps indirectly it's saying too, it's not that you just go and just like rip off everything from somebody's garden. Thanks a lot, buddy. It's for Krishna. You're going to make a lot of advancement. You take all their flowers, but you take a few. This is what I always do. When we're picking flowers, we would go sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning. The police won't stop me. Picking flowers like this in Bhubaneswar on the streets. And I knew where all the good flowering plants were. But I wouldn't take everything. I would take a few things from each different. Like a bee takes a little something. You don't want to offend anybody. You don't want to hurt their heart. And Sanatana Goswami, then again, he quotes from Karma Purana. Vihiteshu nisidanam vihitalabato matam kusamanam upadanam nisidananam naptukari chit. That, okay, there's certain flowers which are good to be offered and there's certain flowers which are not to be offered. And those prohibited flowers you shouldn't offer, like these flowers with a long stamen, which are for Durga or Shivji. We don't offer them. We don't offer those arka flowers. Those kind of, Lord Shiva likes them very much, and the sap is poisonous. Shiva's weird. He likes all this strange kind of stuff, That's why he likes those things. But, so we're not supposed to offer Shiva flowers or Durga flowers to Krishna. In this section of Hari Bhakti Vilas, it says that Krishna likes white flowers. And Radharani, she likes blue flowers. Krishna likes white or red. I'll let you figure out the reasons for that yourself. And then he goes on, Dihita pratisad guys tu, nihitala bato richet. If there's no proper flowers to be offered, then the prohibited flowers can be used. You can use those. In fact, you can offer leaves. In fact, you can offer water if there's nothing else that's appropriate there. And he says there that someone who makes a garden for Krishna, that devotee, he'll go to the spiritual world. There's no doubt about it. And he quotes from Skanda Purana. There's a conversation between Brahma and Narad Muni. And he says, Malati Malayayena Kartiki Pushma Mandapam. There's someone who makes a house out of Malati flowers during the month of Kartik. I can't even imagine what kind of benefit they're going to get from that. Lord Brahma tells that to Narad Muni. And then the Hari Bhakti Vilas says that if you offer flowers that are made out of gold and jewels, that's also really good because they don't get old. Give that to her. You play? I'll give it to Krishna Kund. I'm going to continue this in just a minute. Anupani playing Mridanga. You just do kirtan for a minute, and we'll come back. Continuing where we left off. So Krishna one day, seeing his garden in Mathura, he remembered the gardens of Vrindavan. And we've been quoting some different things from Hari Bhakti Vilas about the importance of flowers. Flowers are really, really important. And there's some verses quoted from the Kurma Purana, Skanda Purana, that speak about the glories of offering flowers, swana ratnadi pushpaischa, that are made out of gold and jewels and very valuable things. And because these things, na nirmal yam hema pushpam arpayad arpitam sada, they can be offered again and again. Flowers that are made out of gold and jewels and things. But then he quotes from Vishnu Dharmottara Purana that if you offer some artificial flowers, you should put that are made out of gold or something like that, and you should smear them first with some fragrant substance, some perfume, some camphor or something like that. Then they can be used. And then he quotes Skanda Purana again. Suvarna mani pushpaistu prito bhavati nachuta tulsi dala bhagina yata priyeta keshava. That Krishna is much more pleased with a tulsi leaf than he is with these things made out of gold and jewels and all like that. He appreciates much, much more that simple, sweet offering. So in our next session, I'm going to stop here, I think. It's actually 9 o'clock, it's really late. In our next session, we'll speak something about Uddhava and how Uddhava came to be Krishna's messenger. And right now, I'd just like to stop and ask devotees if they have any reflections, both the devotees here and the devotees online. And there's a number of comments and things online. Let me just go over those real quick. Mahendra Prabhu and Geneva Mata. I'm sorry, we forgot our microphone. It's a new place. Next time we'll try to have a microphone here. Natalia, nice to see you here from Estonia. Hare Krishna. And Sanjay Prabhu. And Gauranga Madhuri. Hare Krishna Prabhuji from here in Mayapur. And Leela Avatar Mataji. Hare Krishna. You're here in Mayapur somewhere. You can come if you wanted. Aditi Mataji. Hare Krishna. What's that?
She's also She's 10 meters away from us.
Aditi's. And Ujjwala Rasagya Mataji, she comments, it's amazing how one thinks they can go unnoticed, even if they're in the midst of everyone, when they can't wait to do something they love, like Krishna thinking he would not be noticed if he disappears to Vrindavan. That's a very nice comment. Thank you for that. We like to think about Krishna wanting to run away from Mathura in the middle of the night and go back to Vrindavan. Subhananda Mataji, Hare Krishna, nice to see you here. Sanjay Prabhu. Sanjay has a comment kind of question. I very much appreciate what you said about the importance of two separate things, the Hare Krishna movement and ISKCON. If you so desire, and if time permits, can you please throw some more light on it? Well, ISKCON's an institution, and artists in general have a hard time usually with institutions. The oftentimes lawless kind of persons are in trouble with the law. They don't get along with authorities very well. And bhakti is the same kind of way, because art and bhakti are very much the same kind of essential principle. The bhakti and art are meant to come from the heart, an expression of the heart, both bhakti and art. And it's very difficult when you put it in an institutional box. And then it's no longer art, it becomes crafts or something like that, because there's no personal expression. Once we were invited in a country, I'd better not say names too much, by one prominent artist, and she told us that she'd done so many paintings for a particular book for the authorities there, temple authorities, and she was showing them to me. And then she asked me, what do you think of them? And somehow I was inspired in my heart, and I did something you never ever should do as an artist. I've never done it before, I've never done it since. And I said, well, to tell you the truth, I don't really care for them very much. I don't like these paintings because it'll break their heart. And when I said that to her, she said, really? I also don't like them. And she told me, she said, they made me do this and they told me what to do. And I had to paint it like this, and I had to put this person here and do this and this, and I don't really like it. And then she kind of got a little shy, and she said, I have some other paintings, but they're not devotional. Would you like to see them? I said, yeah, I'd like to see. And she showed me these stunning paintings that she'd made, which are kind of like a Japanese, Chinese style. And they were scenes of like sadhus in India, some old lady. Actually, she did a painting of an old lady who comes in the line in the family of Ramananda Roy, and we knew her. from Bentapur, the village of Bentapur. Oh my God, I know. I took a photo of that, and I blew up that picture later and gave it to that old lady. She was in ecstasy. except she painted a lizard in the painting also. I took the lizard out because they don't consider that very auspicious. She wouldn't have liked that. But her paintings were stunning because they were from her heart. And it really moved your heart. And I told her then, I said, if anybody criticizes these paintings because they're not of Krishna and devotional things directly, but they're all like a tulsi plant or a village, I said, then that person should not preach about vegetarianism. Because it's the same thing. We're not interested in preaching about vegetarianism. We're not interested in pictures of old ladies in a village either. But that picture, if it moves your heart and brings you closer to devotion, that's good. So anyway, to get to my point, there's a problem sometimes. There's a tension within art and management, and there's also tension sometimes in bhakti. But we need to have managers. We want to preserve Srila Prabhupada's mission. We want to support that mission. It's a very important mission. Our purpose is not just to take care of buildings and to offer our humble pranams repeatedly to the great leaders of the movement. That's not our purpose here. Our purpose is to see book distribution go on, to see a place where people can come and learn about Krishna, a place where people can come and hear about Krishna. And we should facilitate that. But what's naturally going to happen, as you progress further, just as you progress further in art, you want to become free and you want to express your personal thing. So the same thing is going to happen with bhakti. Quite often, some people, they'll be able to have their expression within the walls of that institution. That's okay. But some people are going to feel a need to not be so restricted and be so formal, and they're going to want to go on. And we should encourage that. We should never discourage that. Although sometimes we discourage it because we want everything neat and antiseptic and prophylactic. But if everybody marches in tune, it's very difficult. In trying to get devotees to march, it's like the saying goes, it's like trying to get a group of cats to march in unison. It just doesn't work. And devotees and artists are also like that when that devotion starts coming deeper in our hearts. So there needs to be a Hare Krishna movement. But those artists and intellectuals who are like cats which cannot be controlled, they should understand in a mature way the importance of the temples, the importance of the mission, and they should always support it, even if sometimes it's a little mechanical, even if sometimes there's some politics, even if sometimes there's some scandals, as long as it serves a greater purpose of giving Krishna consciousness to the public. But to survive, I need to have something separate, and therefore, many times when we speak in Jagannath Puri, we put it in a particular box, in a frame, just like a painting is more beautiful if it has a frame around it. So the frame we give there for reference for people to try to understand something of the purpose of Puri, we call it the Jagannath Puri University of Vraj Prem. And that it's a place to teach us about how to do bhajan to enter Vrindavan. And each different tirthasthala is a classroom with a different lesson. And the first classroom there is a Jagannath temple, which represents organized religion. And Mahaprabhu was going 3 times a day, according to Lochan Das Thakur, 3 times a day to the Jagannath Mandir. And even though those guys were really screwed up, there was all kinds of horrible politics. They wouldn't allow Haridas Thakur, who was Lord Brahma, installed the deities in the previous age. They wouldn't let him in the temple. It's really bad. You know? They wouldn't let him inside the temple. Mahaprabhu and Jagannath supported that organized religion. But to teach us how to survive that organized religion, Mahaprabhu had another place where he stayed. He didn't stay in the Jagannath temple. He stayed in the Gambhira. And in the Gambhira, there was a few intimate friends. So we should always support the temple programs, the temple functions. Prabhupada wanted that. It's an important thing. We want to support Prabhupada's mission. But to survive and to go deeper in bhakti, we need to help create community. The institution, I'm sorry, some community may be there, and there are many temples where there's sweet community. If there's a good solid leader and the devotees have some loving exchanges. But sometimes everybody's coming together in kind of a mechanical way because we're supposed to, and this is what Prabhupada wanted. But that's okay. Don't think that's bad. Don't dismiss that. It's important. But to survive, to go deeper in bhakti, we need to have a private part of our heart. We need to have that other stack of paintings that we don't show to everybody, which shows some other side. Okay. And Prabhuji here is saying, Gauranga Majority, hearing from your lotus lips are always a festival of bliss. Mani Gopal Prabhu, Hare Krishna. And Anil Prabhu, nice to see you. I hope you had a nice program from Maharaj the other day. He said, thanks a lot for the morning nectar. What is a favorite flower of Srimati Radhika and also of Krishna? Also, you said one should not offer dry fruits. Does that mean almonds, cashews, figs, raisins, and things like these? Okay, one thing at a time. First of all, the more lagu of the two, about offering dried fruits. That's what Hari Bhakti Vilas says. But it goes on to say that if there's nothing else to offer, then we can also offer these other things. As far as those nuts and things like that, they're by nature dry. And Krishna likes those nuts, and Shastra in many places speaks about them. I think it's okay. Even he mentions here a very important thing to offer Krishna, which is raisins. Raisins. But not every, but some people say that because they're full of sin, you're not supposed to take raisins. Some friends of ours think like that. But actually, raisins are good to offer to the deity. But in general, we should soak them. It's nicer if we soak them first. But so Hari Bhakti Vilas goes on to say that that's okay. We can also do that. Sanjay Prabhu says, thank you very much for a wonderful answer. So Anil also asks, what is a favorite flower of Srimati Radhika and also Krishna? Radharani, she likes blue flowers, and it said sometimes she likes blue lotus flowers. My grandmother once asked me, I was speaking to them about flowers. I like flowers. And we used to speak about flowers sometimes. And he asked me once, he said, have you ever seen a blue lotus? And I said, no, I've never seen. We see the blue kanika flowers, the lilies, but we haven't seen a blue lotus. But that blue lotus, that Nil Padma, it's mentioned sometimes in Shastra. Radharani likes that because it reminds her of Krishna. Now, what flower does Krishna like the best? I can't say there's any statement that I've read where this is Krishna's favorite flower, this is Radharani's favorite flower, but I can tell you a story from Rupa Goswami's Vidagdha Madhav, that on one occasion, Srimati Radharani made a garland of champak flowers for Krishna. And she sent that with a duti, a messenger, and that messenger came, and she gave that garland to Madhu Mangal, because she's a little shy. Madhu Mangal, who's a Priya Narmasaka, then took the garland and put it on Krishna. And when Krishna was garlanded with that garland of champak flowers, at that time, Krishna became stunned in ecstasy. And Rupa Goswami says that Krishna was thinking to himself, see, this flower, there's a saying, champak varni radha. That Radharani, she's the color of the champak flower. Perhaps the champak flower is the color of Radharani, the other way around. But when Krishna had that garland put around his neck, he immediately remembered the beautiful daughter of Maharaj Vrishabhanu, and he became ecstatic. And he thought, just as this garland is embracing my chest, I also wish I could embrace the daughter of Maharaj Vrishabhanu, Srimati Radharani. So certainly Krishna, he likes champak flowers very, very much. Krishna Kun wanted it. She's looking something.
So I'm looking for a particular file that I have here about champak flowers specifically, and what Srila Prabhupada said about them.
Oh.
And I can't find.
Can you comment? Did you just remember offhand what Prabhupada said about champak flowers?
There was a story told about Nanda Kishore. I believe he was telling the story that Prabhupada was in South India, and they were coming out from Nishinga temple, one of the Nishinga temples, maybe Jeva Nishinga, I'm not sure which one. One Nishinga temple they were coming out of, and somebody found a champak flower and gave it to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada put two of his fingers out of his bead bag. He was chanting japa, and he was holding the champak flower all afternoon, like for hours. And from time to time was smelling it and said, "This is something that Krishna likes very much." And then there's another quote from Srila Prabhupada where he speaks about the champa flower being the color of Lord Gauranga. Mahaprabhu.
Nice. I have to stick up for another flower, important flower. Malay su pushpe nagare su Delhi. There's a saying in Orissa that I think it's a Hindi saying actually, but that of all the cities, Delhi's the best. I don't know why, but that's what it says. And of all the flowers, the mully is the best. Those little white flowers, which remind Krishna of Srimati Radharani. And I can tell you a story about those mully flowers. I was a pujari for Lord Jagannath. I would put him to rest every night and dress him in the morning. And one night, I was putting Jagannath to rest, and they had these beautiful mully garlands. And I was thinking of my Guru Maharaj, who I knew was sitting outside his hut chanting japa. And so really quickly, I took the garland off Jagannath. I hadn't put him to rest yet. And I ran outside down the steps of the temple, and I gave the garland to my Guru Maharaj. And he was, oh, very, very nice. He liked very much. Those flowers are very, very special. And the devotees, they appreciate very much. So, Mani Gopal Prabhu, amazing reference, he says, from Jagannath Puri with wonderful elucidation about bhakti within the movement. Thank you, Prabhu. And then Neil says, thanks a lot for the beautiful response in Maharaj's program, went really well. I'll never forget Maharaj. He's very close to my heart. Thank you, Neil Prabhu, for serving him. So anybody else here, we have any reflections you want to share with us today? Welcome. Prabhuji, can you come over close so the devotees can hear you? In fact, I'm going to put you online. Okay? You can see your beautiful face.
I've been thinking when you mentioned how important is education. So like Sandipani Muni, and how important is education in our society, especially in Islam. So you mentioned also that you mentioned, you quote from Hari Bhakti last one lecture, Istagopam Ishtam Gopajas Mantam. Sorry. One should hide one's Ishtadev, one should hide one's Guru, one should hide one's mantra, and one should hide one's own japa. So you can elaborate a little about that?
Okay. If there's something which is really dear to you, something valuable, you don't show it to everybody. And that's the nature of bhakti. We spoke about this not so long ago, quoting from the Bible, which says in one place that if you give charity with your right hand, your left hand shouldn't know about it. And there's another verse that says something to the effect that Christ says that that person who's offering prayers to me, he says you should go to a private place when you offer prayers in the Bible. And we should hide those things, not because we're denying those things or because they're bad or something like that, but because they're so very, very special. Once, my Guru Maharaj was in America, in Los Angeles, and somebody came to me and invited him to speak on television. He told me there's going to be like 4 million people watching it. It's a big TV show. And so I went to Guru Maharaj and said, I wasn't sure how we feel about it. So Guru Maharaj, there's devotees there, a TV show, they're inviting you. Guru Maharaj said, no, I'll not go. I speak to the devotees. And later I mentioned that story to my teacher, my Siksha Guru, Fakir Mohan Prabhu. And he gave a very interesting response. He said, yes, we cannot speak on television because if you speak Krishna Katha and you start crying, it won't be appropriate on television. And so this is the same spirit that's given here. Gopiya Nija Malakam, we hide our mala, meaning we don't advertise our chanting, means we keep it in a bead bag because in Hari Bhakti Vilas it also says that we hide our mala because some ghosts or different subtle creatures may come and take away the benefit of it. So we keep it in a bead bag. But hiding our mala also means I don't advertise how many rounds that I chant. If you do that, then you're a very generous person because you're giving away the benefit of your bhajan to so many different people. We should hide our Ishtadev. It means that we don't just run around and telling everybody, I'm a great devotee, I have this. Because really our Ishtadev means that personality who appears in our heart, that we have this attraction for. And that comes at a later point, generally in our bhajan. But we don't advertise it. We don't speak about that. We don't advertise our guru. We don't speak about our bhajan. And why? There's a nice commentary I read on the Lapkusa Manjali, which describes that Rupa Goswami says we should hide our bhajan. And the explanation is given that just like you have a pot of water in the kitchen, and you turn on the flame full blast and the pot's boiling away, and in that small room, it looks very impressive. It looks like outside today, there's like fog. And it looks like really something's happening. Whereas if you put a lid on the pot, it looks like nothing's happening, right? You don't see it. It's not a big thing. But what happens to that pot? If you keep the lid on very tightly, eventually something's going to explode because the pressure builds up and builds up. So in the same way with our bhajan and with these different things, with these feelings, if we share this publicly to everybody, then it looks very big. And people say, wow, he chants 1 lakh a day or 2 lakhs on Ekadasi. Oh my God, and he fasts every Ekadasi. He's such an elevated devotee. And see all the pictures of him with his guru, and they're so close with their guru. And it looks really big, and everybody claps their hands, and you get a large following. Whereas somebody else who doesn't speak about those things, who hides those things, the pressure builds up. I remember reading a mundane book when I was a boy about some army soldiers who were in the mountains, and they had some special service. And there was some other army soldier came to visit, and there was a kind of competition between 2 soldiers who was stronger. And one of them asked the other one, "Can you bend this iron rod?" And the guy picks it up. Yes, with all his strength, he managed to bend the iron rod. And then he checked, "Can you unbend it?" And the other fellow tried and tried. "No, I can't. I'm not so strong." And so the first fellow left. And after he left, the other fellow had to fix the fire. And so then he just picked up the iron bar, just like it was nothing, unbent it, and poked in the fire. And so the point was being made that actually the second person was much superior, but he hid his strength. He didn't show it off. And so when we show off those things, we may get some cheap following, but it's not conducive for bhakti. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
Anything from anybody else you're walking away with today? Just maybe one. Mataji?
And about this, like, we should hide our bhakti or like views, our everything. It's like, in India, it's like I don't know, there's like this evil eye. If you like tell people how much money you would say, they would be, oh, you have so much money. And then you don't get any more. Afterwards, you don't get. And it's like finished. Oh,
Yeah.
evil eye. There's like this point.
So Lalita Kun, Mataji, she's commenting that on the same point, because they can't hear what you're saying, that there's it's said to be like an evil eye. Someone, if you talk about how much money you make or something, then sometimes they say it means you're not going to get any more money. You should. And it's in a similar way, people in India, they don't talk about their intimate behavior with their wife or their husband. They keep things private. It's a very important principle for a cultured person.
So my
Nari?
question, and Mayapur is which room in this university?
Which?
Mayapur, it's which room in this university?
Mayapur is a different university. And
And
there's different classrooms here. It's also an educational place for us. And it's similar to all 3 of these places. Prabhupada says in one purport that these 3 places, Vrindavan Dham, Mayapur Dham, and Jagannath Puri Dham, are 3 places in the same, they're non-different. As Fakir-Rambu would say, they're 3 rooms in the same house. As Sachimata said here in Mayapur, she said, Nilachali Nabadvipik Jayadvigar. That these 2 places, Nilachal and Jagannath Puri, Mayapur and Jagannath Puri, they're non-different. They're 2 rooms in the same house. So they serve the same purpose, but there's a little different purpose too. In Navadvip Leela, Mahaprabhu has his Grihastha Leela, and the devotees are very happy. This is why Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his Ashtakaliya Smarana about Gauranga Mahaprabhu, he doesn't speak about Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Vrindavan or in Jagannath Puri, because the devotees don't want to think about that. He shaved his head, he's laying on the ground and rubbing his face on the wall. That's terrible. We want to think about him with Vishnu Priya and Sachimata cooking for him and things. And so there's a particular service here that the residents of Navadvip do, and they have a particular mood, and Mahaprabhu reciprocates with them. But when he wants to reciprocate with Srimati Radharani, to repay his debt to her, then he has to leave Mayapur. He has to leave his mother and his dear friends and his wife. And he has to, just as Radharani ran in the dead of night to Krishna, Mahaprabhu has to take sannyas and leave his family and go to Jagannath Puri. And there he can taste that mood of Srimati Radharani. So these two places are not different, Mayapur and Jagannath Puri, but they serve different purposes. Mathura is also part of Braj. Rupa Goswami has written a book, Mathura. Mathura? Mathura Mahima, I think it's the title of it. Yeah. Mathura Mahatma, I think it's Mathura Mahatma. Yeah. And it speaks about Braj. But in that sense, there's no difference between those two. Because without Mathura, Braj wouldn't be what it is. If there was no departure from Vrindavan, then we wouldn't appreciate the feelings of the Brijbasis so much. There has to be something to counteract it. There has to be some other feeling. And so Puri and Mayapur also the same way. If Mahaprabhu never left his family, if he never left Sachimata, the feelings wouldn't be so intense in Puri. There wouldn't be such a drama. Is that okay? It's a big, big topic. There's many things.
Somebody could hear about it.
Okay. Sometimes if you come to Jagannath Puri, we speak about it sometimes. Anybody else have anything? Krishna Khan, come over here and speak real loud. Maybe even.
I have a couple of things that really struck with me.
Real loud.
One of them was Nanda Maharaj, how just by hearing about Krishna's return to Mathura from Snigdakanta and Madhukanta, he's crying and
embracing
Krishna.
That's Krishna Pata.
And then that's Krishna Pata. That, for me, that was a very important, that means that if it's real Krishna Pata and if the listeners have the heart for it, then Krishna can appear. And you can embrace him, and he actually comes. And so that was very significant for me. And the other point which was very significant for me was at the time of Krishna's departure from Avantipur, how he told Sandipani Muni that Mathura is the birthplace of my body, but Avantipur is the birthplace of my qualities. And basically thus implying that Sandipani Muni is his father. And I'm thinking how affectionate, how sweet Krishna is, and how, first of all, that's one
I hope
thing.
everybody online can hear this okay. She's not speaking so loud and so close.
The one point from this is how sweet Krishna is and how affectionate his dealings are, just amazing. The second point is that our Gurudev is the birthplace of our good qualities, and he's our real father, Guru Mata, Guru Pita. And the third point that I wanted to remember from this is how this is the similar kind of thing as you pointed out, as when Krishna talked to Nanda Maharaj when the Yadus were getting him to remain in Mathura, how I always stay with my relatives and sometimes I stay with my friends. And it kind of gives a little glimpse into Krishna's heart and Krishna's feelings about things, and it was very touching for me. Thank you.
It's an important thing too. There's so many subtle points which we've tried to bring out, which can help us to understand how to develop community and how to develop our own personal relationships, because we're really not very well educated in relationships in the West. People don't even live in the same place. They're constantly moving here and there. And it's an important thing. There's a difference between our family and our friends. And we love our friends, and sometimes we stay with them. But our family is something else. And we need that. We need to have family. And we need to have friends, both. Anupam, do you have any reflections you want to share?
Actually, I also wanted to
Come closer.
this point when Krishna speaks that Avantipur is a birthplace of our good qualities. This was so important for me to hear that Krishna indicates that his Guru gives him these good qualities, and we always have to remember that devotees and Vaishnavas and Gurus, this is the source of whatever good we have in our behavior or qualities or something. And I have a question. I hope you will come to this explanation maybe the next class. I would like to hear more about differences between Mathura gardens and Vrindavan gardens.
Okay, let's just comment on that very briefly. That would be a very big topic. We could have seminar about for weeks. But just very briefly and simply, one reminds you of the other, but the other is the original. And that garden, and what is so special about it, Bhaktivinoda indirectly indicates in Gita Mala that I want to make this garden for the devotees to come and hear and chant. So it said hearing and chanting, which indicates Krishna, that when Krishna is there, when Krishna's devotees are there, that's what makes the gardens really, really special. That's what makes those Vrindavan gardens the most special, because that means the kunjas of Vrindavan. And how can you have Kunja Bihari Krishna without Radha Madhav, without Gopi Janavallabha, without all the gopis? It's just not the same. And so therefore Krishna's crying. But those Mathura gardens are useful because they're Udipana. They're reminding him of the Vrindavan gardens. And they're serving a purpose here. Krishna's seeing that. And what is he? He's not crying because he sees the tree. Oh, gee, this tree, I miss the trees of Vrindavan. But he's remembering what he does in those gardens in Vrindavan, those kunjas. He remembers the gopis and Nanda Maharaj and the boys and how they play. And it's a deep in that. Okay? And therefore our Goswamis, Rupa and Sanatan and Ramakeli, they created another Vrindavan garden. And many Vaishnavas, Prabhupada created another Vrindavan garden in New Vrindavan in America. And the devotees, they do that. And Prabhupada wanted, he said, you make different gardens here, different forests, and you have a Radhakund and a Shamakund. We wanted it because this is Udipana. But even if you do all those things, and you just take people on a museum tour, and here's our Radhakund, and here's our Shamakund, it's going to be really dry. Unless you go there with devotees, and you do kirtan, and have Krishna Katha, then Krishna comes, and it creates a purpose. Okay, so we got to stop. I really don't want to go this late again. Sorry, I know Krishna Kun's got to go. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Binda ki jai, Vancha Kalpa Varubhishcha, Kripa Sindhu Bheva Cha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo.